everybody. That is the intro. It's the only one I know, and it's going to stay that way until we figure something out.
Hey, it's
So if
pretty consistent now.
now. But if anybody out there in Maple Syrup Land really wants to do us a solid and write us a theme song,
Mm,
we'll use
we
it.
never
That'd be
talked about that
great.
before, yeah.
I know we don't talk about a lot of stuff, but that's something I thought about just now as I was playing that. I said, "Hey, we have talented friends. They could probably
Yeah.
make us something." I mean, it's not that I am necessarily untalented. It's just I'm untalented on that particular instrument.
It
Hey,
sounds fine to me.
who's that? Who's that guy?
Sorry, that was really well punctuated.
Yeah, that's my nephew doing something weird. Whoa, which one was that?
Can't tell from that scream.
But the other screams, I could tell if it
Some
was
screams I
Everson or
can.
Harrison. Yeah.
It's true.
You're sensitive to the screams of the young ones. Well, welcome Jay Cormier to the show. We are here. It is Maple Syrup. It is a Wednesday night, 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Where Jay is, I believe it's 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific because
That's
he's
early.
on the weird coast. And Erica and I are like dog tired, and Jay's like fresh as a daisy.
You got a whole
Fresh
3
as a
hours on
freaking
us.
daisy. Yeah.
Oh, good. I was just gonna ask if our chat was working, and the first one came in. Our chat was having little technical issues last time.
Yeah, and I think it depends on where they're which particular thing they're chatting in from, whether it's my Facebook page, the Facebook page, or the YouTube
YouTube.
page. It all is different. But welcome, Catherine Dreyer. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hi.
Catherine is a designer out in also on the West Coast of the world. She used to be from New Zealand, but she is doing some great work out on the West Coast. Some really interesting games that I hope people get to see and play someday.
Am I going to
For
see
reals,
her
for
at
reals.
Shucks? I can't remember. She said she's going to Shucks.
I don't know.
Maybe
She could
can
put in
answer that.
the comments. We'll find out. Anyone going to
No, find out.
Shucks, give a shout out.
Yeah, let us know. I
Shay's
am no
gonna be
longer
there.
going to Shucks, unfortunately, because I got the old COVID. It was no fun, but I'm not dead. So that's a positive thing.
Bonus.
Hello, David Killing. Good to see you. David, your name came up the other day between Erica and myself. So there you go. Amy, good to see you too. Amy is also a West Coaster. Amy's out in that area of the world too. So we got a lot of West Coaster people watching us right now, which is great. David is not. David's in Toronto. Jay, you've actually I think you've seen some of David's stuff too. I think I showed you his videos. David,
Yes, I do
we
know.
think about you a lot. You
Cool.
got some amazing stuff, dude.
Yeah,
So
yeah, very cool.
yeah. Oh, Catherine's going to be at BGGCon, which is also very cool. You should try to get up into Shucks sometimes. It's a good time. Good time had by all.
I've still never been. I want to go.
This is the first
I've
time
never
I'm
not
missing. Yeah, this is the first time I've never not been,
Opposite.
and I'm very mad.
It's my first
I mean,
Essen. So
it is in Vancouver, and I live in Vancouver, so how can
yeah.
I
Yeah.
go?
Home court advantage.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but this is Essen #1 for Erica, which is very
Yes,
cool. I
Essen
still haven't
#1.
been. Jay's only been once?
Twice,
right?
Remember,
I've
Jay
only
goes
been
to all
once.
the cons. He just told us that.
He doesn't though. He really doesn't.
I'm just joking.
He's just goes to the select good ones. So there you go. Well, welcome Jay Cormier and howdy meeps. How are you all doing out there? Make sure you let us know in the chat where you are, where you're from, what you're doing. Just chitter chatter in there. We'll get at you and let you know when the questions are coming up. But today we're talking to Jay Cormier. Jay is not only the co-designer of many of the games that I'm also the co-designer of. Fancy that. He is also
Convenient. No, I'm just-
the person behind Off the Page Games. So it's true. A lot of people say, "Sen, isn't Off the Page Games you and Jay?" It's like, no, 90% no. Jay
Just
took
a second.
that. Yeah.
This
Well,
is the publisher, man.
yeah. Jay is the publisher. Jay and I co-designed Mind Management, and I'm going to be doing several of the other projects with Jay and other people through Off the Page Games at some point. But no, it's a one-person show currently because the story of how that happened is Matt Kent said, "Why don't we just do it ourselves?" And Jay
We
said,
got the
"Yeah, why
rights
don't
back
we
to it,
just do it
yeah.
ourselves?" And I said, "I don't have time." And Jay said, "Well, I've got time." And then he did it, and it happened, and it was great. And there you go.
Well, let's hear more from
Yeah.
Jay, and he can
Yeah,
tell us a
actually,
bit more about that as well.
I'm actually now a 5-person team. I actually have a team of 5.
Tell us
so-
about that. Tell us who did you hire first and why?
Mhm.
And why wasn't it your best friend? I'm just Just asking.
You already have a full-time job. Come
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
True.
I mean, I paid people like designers like yourself.
Oh,
I've
sure.
and graphic designers and all sorts of stuff. But I'm now, I think my first hire was a social media manager, Dina Ramsey's out in Finland, and so she's kind of running all my social media and helping me with like the Kickstarter ads, that kind of stuff. And then I saw a posting on Facebook of a guy named Sebastian Kozner who said that he's just finished his contractor's term with another publisher and he's a graphic designer. And he was just like, is anybody looking for work? And I wasn't familiar with him. So I quickly, like, BGG'd him. And he's done like, I don't know, 30 or 40 games of graphic design. I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was all great. And I like quickly messaged him, like, yeah, do you want to work for me part time? He's like, yes, please. And so he's been working part time up until this past Monday, where he's now been moved to full time status.
Ooh, it's official.
Full time status as a in house graphic designer.
That's
And
huge. That's a
huge.
huge step that you have like full-time employees.
It's wild, and he's been so busy. I mean, obviously we've got a Kickstarter launching in less than a week now, so like he's just very very busy. But I have other projects that are outside of the scope of Off the Page Games under my Fail Faster brand that he's also helping me out with concurrently. So there's lots of stuff going on in the background, which is wonderful. And then I hired a bookkeeper because I'm not really good at all the bookkeeping type stuff. Somebody in Calgary. And Sebastian, by the way, is in Argentina, which is super cool.
Mhm.
And then I finally just hired a customer solutions manager. And
Oh, cool.
a cool story here is that there was one, if not a few people on Kickstarter that were very helpful on Kickstarter, just as backers. And they would go in and literally answer questions. Jay said this and blah, blah, blah for me. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then one of them, his name was Joe. He ended up agreeing to playtest some of the Harrow County games as I started posting, hey, if you want to playtest them, and he'd like signed up. And he played with me almost every week. And he would message me in the middle of the week saying, hey, are we playtesting this week? I'm like, yeah, we are. Let's do it. And as I got to this point where I'm like, I need somebody to help manage all the customer requests coming in and like parts replacement, all this kind of stuff. And I put it, I'm like, there's nobody in the world better at this than Joe. He's already kind of doing it. And I just like, now I could pay him for it. And I'm like, I just didn't know if he'd be interested in it. And he's like, yeah, no, that's great. It's actually kind of what I do for my real job. I'm like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. So yeah, that's my team now.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. I think it's really, really interesting to see what needs come first. And it's going to be different for different publishers, but a lot of times it's like, what don't I like to do?
Let's find
What
someone
am
who's
I
better.
willing to pay somebody else to do? What do I really need done at a high pro level that I can't do myself? I think those are like the two things that it sounds like
Mhm.
you've hired out, right? It's like, can't do bookkeeping, really don't like doing the social media side of it, like that side of the social media where it's like kind of impersonal.
Yeah,
Can't do the graphic design as well as I'd like to, and dealing with customer service stuff. I think those are
just bogs you
great
down.
first
Yeah,
hires. Yeah,
yeah.
right. And now you are free to do what you want to do. And if you talk to other people like Patrick Leader and whoever else is like CEO of their company, like they do the same thing. They're like, you hire out the stuff that you can't do so that you can do the stuff you're really really good at, right?
Yep.
Because each of the different CEOs is, they've got their own superpowers and they got to let those shine. But if they're bogged down doing all like the everyday stuff, then
Yeah.
it gets
You never
really
have enough
Add,
time in
difficult,
the
you
day.
don't. It
right?
adds up so fast, man.
Yeah, well, even Gavin, right? Gavin Brown of Roxley is like a ridiculously skilled graphic designer, but I'm pretty sure he also hires out graphic designers.
Yeah, how are
Hmm.
you supposed to run the company and
He
then do
can't,
all of the
Hmm.
graphic
right?
design?
Whereas Josh and Helena, because Helena is doing most of the business end, Josh can still do his area of expertise, which is the graphic design and illustration stuff. So it's just a really neat way that people kind of fill in the voids, fill in those little gaps of their own skill sets and
Yeah.
likes and dislikes. That's very cool.
Well, I think that's really cool is that obviously you're growing because you have more games coming.
Yeah.
So, do you want to tell
Definitely.
us a little bit about the ones that are maybe out there already? Just because, I mean, not the ones from you two, they can go look that up. But let's talk a little bit more about the off the page. The first one, we can talk about mind
Mind man.
management because I
Yeah.
think that might be a great springboard onto Harrow County.
Yeah, I mean, we launched that. It's based on one of my favorite comics of all time, and we launched it and did really well on Kickstarter. And we're just about selling out of the first print run, and about ready to do a second print run. And of course, Shut Up and Sit Down does a review, and we're like, wow, that's awesome. And if you're familiar with them, you know that they have an effect on sales, and so much so that February 2nd is when that review came out. I remember this because February 3rd, someone mentioned to me like, maybe you should do another Kickstarter, dude. Like the demand is high. I didn't think you could do another Kickstarter if you don't have anything new to offer. And technically, as long as it's not available, it's not something that exists. That like and the deluxe edition, for example, does not exist. You can't buy it anywhere. But on top of that, we added these secret mission cards that were kind of already in the game. They were just hidden, and you had to print them out yourself once you found a secret code. So we thought, well, let's add those as printed things, so it offers something also to the returning backers. And so I put that together within 5 days. By February 8th, it was launched like another Kickstarter. Within like 6 days of a Shut Up Sit Down review,
That's crazy
launched.
turnaround.
This crazy turnaround. Literally had zero inkling I was doing another Kickstarter in the next week once that launched. You know what I mean? And we ended up doing like $780 or something $1,000 on that. And 2 days into it, Matt Kint's like, he's like, I want to do some playing cards. I'm like, and then we talked about it.
Of course you did.
And we're like, well, can we add that to this Kickstarter? So midway through the campaign, we added these mind management playing cards that Sen and I tweaked. They're just normal playing cards in the sense they have all this normal suits and whatnot. But Sen and I added a rule to every single card, and so you can play any traditional game with them. And but there's ways that some of these cards can be activated in any game playing, poker or rummy or cribbage or whatever, and it will add these cool, funky, weird abilities to your game, making it chaotic and maybe not for purists, but for somebody who wants a bit more chaos and fun and hilarity to their game. It's gonna be fun. And the art,
But they want their mind
is
managed.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Very on brand. So
Yeah,
that was
it's super on
mind
brand.
management, and that was my whole goal with that one, was to make something that is as on brand as possible. Now, from the game perspective, that was already done by Seth and I. Like that's as on brand as good. But I was talking about like the marketing, the campaign itself. We had secret missions in the campaign where people had to go out on missions and find hidden stuff and solve and decode things. Like there was a lot of extra, really hard work that people got, like formed a small little club online, and there was actually a BGG thread called the Annulment Department. They self-titled themselves that. They self-titled themselves. Okay, nice. And it was great. So there's a lot of on brands, and that's really big for me to show that we really know and get the comic book that we're basing on, and it's not just some paste job or something, that we're really dedicated to that. So
I mean,
that's
really,
first
that
thing.
should have been the name of the company, Jay, not some paste job.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the annulment department, they still talk about the annulment department to
Yeah.
this day.
You got a whole club built up around
yeah.
a game. Like, think how rare that is.
It's
Yes.
fun.
Catherine, I am doing well. I'm back from COVID, I think, pretty much. Andrew, hello. Joe, hello. Oh, Josh, not Joe. Andrew, Joe, Adam, hello. So a lot of Canadians and a lot of people on the West Coast. That's who we seem to attract here, is West Coast people and Canucks, which is all good. You're
Hey.
all lovely and wonderful. So yeah, let's talk about Harrow County and what.
Installment 2, I guess
Yeah.
you could say.
First of all, tell us a little bit about the source material. Tell us a little bit about the game and how the two really kind of came together.
It's kind of funny. So like my management finishes up, and I'm like, obviously now I'm trying to think. I'm a company now, so I'm like, what's my next game? What am I going to do next? And I thought, well, I don't know. I mean, I've put myself in this nice corner of saying that all my games are going to be based off of creator-owned comic books. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? Do I start looking at creator-owned comic books to start trying to come up with games? And I'm like, oh, maybe I have to do that. And Sen and I are kind of brainstorming some stuff. And then I had a game I designed with someone that's not Sen, if you can believe it.
I don't.
His name's Shad Miller, and it was called Skirmishes, and we had started designing it a long time ago. And it had some nibbles from some publishers here and there, but it never got kind of picked up. And we kind of kept tweaking it and playing with it and trying to figure it out. And I thought, man, I really like that game, and I think it could be very Kickstarter friendly. It's got attacking and combat and little possibly miniatures or something. And so I'm like, maybe I could do that. But I'm like, okay, now I got to think about what comic can I put that into. And so I was trying to think of all the comics. Like, is there any comic I could think of where there's like warring factions? And I couldn't think of any off the top of my head that fit or was creator owned, so that I could approach the creators directly as opposed to DC or Marvel or something like that. And so I actually went to Chris Schweitzer, who is really cool, has a really cool art style that I really like. And he didn't have a comic that fit with this brand, but I set up a meeting with him because he's friends with Matt Kint. And so we had all play tested an early version of Mind Management together a long time ago. And I kind of pitched him the game. I showed it to him. We kind of played it. And I said, now I know you don't have a comic like this, but would you be interested in like writing a comic and then I make this game and then they kind of come out at the same time or something? Like, I'm just kind of throwing dirt at the screen, see what happens or whatever. Not dirt. That sounds bad. Spaghetti? What am I throwing? I'm throwing something. See if it sticks.
You're throwing something.
Yeah. And he said, well, I'm kind of like 6 books deep and I've got deadlines and I gotta have it. And so anyways, he's the one that said, well, you know what, this actually kind of feels like it could fit in the Harrow County universe and world. I'm like, oh. So I went and read that comic really quickly, and it was super, super awesome. Right at I can't believe I never heard of it or hadn't read it up to that point, because I grew up loving horror comics. Like, that was my main comic I collected, was horror comics. So amazing that this fell through the cracks for me, and I loved it so much. And so I set up a meeting with Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook, the creators of Harrow County, pitched them skirmishes and say, now imagine Harrow County over everything. And at the time, the game was very symmetrical, and it was played on 3 different maps at the same time. And you actually had to kind of, divert your attention on which one do you want to focus on. And they saw enough in it that they're like, yeah, I see it. And so we started to work on, we made contracts and blah, blah, blah. And we started work on it. And as soon as we got the Harrow County IP, we started, there's some lovely pictures. We started pouring the brand of Harrow County, and we started analyzing it. If you're making a game on Harrow County, what would you expect to be in a game of Harrow County? And we're like, well, Emmy is the main girl, and the protectors, maybe she's going to be a faction or something, and then the family, probably they're going to fight against family. And we started realizing very quickly that they had different goals and objectives. So we're like, okay, so how are we going to represent that? We had to come up with these asymmetric ways on how they got points or how they win the game, and that just led into asymmetric play styles on top of that. Yeah, you're seeing some of the cool highlights of the game here. And we can talk about that in a minute. And so it just everything kind of kept getting more and more asymmetric until eventually we said, this 3 map thing is getting very confusing. Let's see if we can do a training mode just on 1 map. And we kind of boiled it down to 1 map, not even knowing if it would work. And it was really good. It was really fun. And it was a lot faster. I'm like, this is great. And we kind of focused on 1 map for a long time. And then we said, let's get the 2 and 3 map game back out. And we put it back out. It was too convoluted. Now that it was so asymmetric, it was just too much. And we're like, scrap it. It's gone. So it's so funny, for 4 years of development of this game was like, it's a 3 map game. That was like the core concept of it. And then we killed that darling. And now it is a 1 map game, and it's better for it.
You're gonna hack off the stuff that doesn't work, even if it's where you started.
I know, right?
That's awesome. And we did just start to see some of the tidbits of this. So we've heard a bit about the story, but if people were looking at the images, you saw that there's some really unique design elements, especially from a product standpoint, that have been put into this game that were kind of teased through those little pictures. Yes. And we just had someone comment, says, whoa, Gamebox Cube Tower. Yes. Why don't we talk a bit about that? Because also as well, I'd love to talk about the figures and the idea of the how you can actually alter them.
Yes. So surprisingly, Sen and I have designed a lot of games together, but for me, I had never designed a combat game before. Now, Sen has designed a few combat games without me, because I don't know, he just doesn't like fighting with me. I don't know.
You don't like combat games normally.
It's true. I don't really actually play many combat games. So what that meant as a designer is it meant I had a lot of learning to do, because I had to go through all the learnings that everyone else who designs combat games already know. And I didn't know all this stuff. And so,
He
for
did not.
example, I didn't. For example, when we started, it was a very deterministic combat resolution, which means kind of like chess. You move onto a player's space with a piece and you take it, you defeat them. And that's how our combat was. If you could move onto their space, you defeated them. And so that's how it was for a while. And we just kind of, with Harrow County as the brand, it actually kind of lacked a certain emotion that we were looking for in the game and the certain experience. And it became more puzzly, and that didn't feel very Harrow County, and it didn't have that kind of whoa moments. And so, of course, like most people, I guess, we go to dice, and so we start rolling dice, and we start realizing how swingy dice are, and so then we start coming up with mitigation, all these different ways you can mitigate dice, and different faces on the dice, and we just keep changing dice over and over again because no matter what, rolling 2 1s just sucks. And that's going to happen from time to time in any combat game. There's going to be a miss, but it's like it never felt good. And no matter how much we change it to like, okay, anything over a 4 is a hit, or anything over a 3 is it. Like whatever we hit, we just kept trying to change the dice to not be dice so that we could not have it be so swingy. Eventually, we're trying to come up with some other ways to do combat. And I don't know how we kind of came up with the cube tower as an idea. I've played at least one game with a cube tower, if not more, but Amerigo is probably my favorite Stefan Feld game. And it has a cube tower, and it's used very cleverly in that game. And I thought, wow, I wonder if we could use that for combat resolution. And so, and for those that are watching that might not know what a cube tower is, because a lot of people think it's a dice tower, and it's not a dice tower, it's a cube tower. And the difference is that a dice tower, everything comes through, and in a cube tower, there are these little ledges and holes and
Baffles
in between, and some of the cubes that you drop in stay in the tower and some come out, so it randomizes what comes out. And not only that, but the cubes that would stay behind might get jostled free in a future dump. And so it's always surprising what comes out of that cube tower, and that creates that emotion every time. Whoa, this kind of thing. With dumpster,
but it's somewhat predictable. Somewhat.
It's self-balancing, is what I would say.
That's a better way to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you put a lot of cubes in and none of yours are coming out, well, in the future turn, boom, they're all going to come out on a future turn. It's going to be very exciting, which has happened time and time again, which is super fun. So then it became like, okay, what's this cube tower going to be? And I'm like, oh, it's got to be the tree, because that's a very important part of the story of Harrow County, because that's where the main witch of the story is hung and burned on the very first page of the first comic by this tree, and then buried under this tree. And then Emmy, that girl on the cover of the box there, she was born as a baby out of that hole in the tree right there. So that hole is even very important. This isn't just a made-up tree and a made-up hole. That's like actually part of the story.
It's an actual hole.
It's an actual hole. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe this cube tower, a standalone cube tower, will be a tree. And I'm trying to think of how do I make this cube tower look like a tree? Like we'll put superfluous branches on it. We'll Everdell the heck out of it. You know what I mean? And then I'm like, that's going to be awkward or something like that. And concurrently to that, we were talking about with Tyler about the cover art. And again, like we just said, well, it'd be cool if the tree was on the cover for sure, because it's so integral. And we talked blah, blah, blah. And then just through that, I'm like, oh man, a little itch in my brain was like, is there a way to kind of somehow get this cube tower in the box? And I remember even brainstorming with Sen about this. You remember that, Sen? I was trying to figure out the logistics, like how would it work? You know what I mean? Like how do you make it such that the lid can close? And it took me a while to figure out actually the logistics of just how to make it work. And I finally figured it out. I hired somebody to make it, and they made it, and it works beautiful. And it's awesome. Yeah, you literally drop cubes into the top. There's a hole, and it comes out the front. It's so cool. It's a very good eye-catching component.
Oh, I think this is super clever. It's amazing how much like we talk a lot about how the rules in the box are kind of like a third or more of the game, but when you actually get the idea of like, wait, the box can be used in the game, like genuinely using all the parts of what you've got.
Yeah, it's super cool. Exciting.
Oh, we have a question. Ben Osteen asks on YouTube, how much does a custom box construction like that cost compared to a standard telescoping box?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was going to be paying for the cube tower thing anyways. And
Right.
So the box actually is still just a normal box. and then they make the cube tower separately. They fold it up manually, and they affix it with a double-sided tape to the inside. So it's I guess the same price for the actual box, and then just the cube tower is a separate thing. So when I say it's built in the box, it's built in, but it's not like part of the same cardboard.
It's been attached into the corner of it.
Yeah. So the extra cost would be in the manual construction and affixment of it.
Yeah, and that's hard to break out because they don't tell me how much it costs just for that labor. Like it's just there's one line for labor for all the
Right.
packing and everything.
Yeah,
so I
for
don't
like
know how,
absolutely everything.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but the box itself is just a box with a hole cut in it. Well, 2 holes cut in it.
Mm-hmm. But it's actually just to kind of clarify, because this is how I was hard time to figure it out. So that's the box and that's the hole, but it's actually has to. So that again, that's the lid. The lid doesn't have the cube tower in it, so that had to have holes in it. It's the next part that had to have the hole in it. I had to paint this part black because we only did it white and I wanted it black. So the final one, this will all be black. But so that's what it is. So there's a hole in the top and a hole in the bottom. You know what I mean? Of the box.
Yep.
If you understand what I mean.
So there's 4 holes.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, 3 actually. This one is a hole in the cube tower itself, not in the box.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
So funny.
It's a hole in a separate box.
But this
there's
game
a lot.
is packed.
There's a lot with a whole lot of holes.
Stuff.
Packed with a lot of holes.
It is packed with stuff.
It's super engaging just to see, right? I mean,
Yes.
like, you talk about gimmicks.
Oh,
this is one of those genuinely useful gimmicks.
Exactly.
And that's even better.
And I, the last thing I'll say about it, and I kind of said already, but it's just the fact that it's a gimmick and it's like a cool, eye-catching thing and whatnot. But because the tree is so integral to the story, it feels on brand to do it. It feels like that hole is so important, and that combat resolution coming out of that hole, that's telling you how the fate of Harrow County is pretty cool.
So TK has a question. Sorry, it's okay. He asks, have you released any info on the backer tiers for Kickstarter yet?
I have not. Is that a question about what they are?
Yeah.
Maybe a hint at like what's coming. What are some of the special stuff?
Yeah. So the plan is that the retail edition game will be $65 US. I tried to get it down to 60, but when all said and done, this game costs me more than Mind Management, and Mind Management's a $60 game, so I just couldn't get it down. To make and to sell. It costs me more to make, and therefore have to charge more to sell it. I really tried hard, but it's like, how much experience do you have to give up just to get it to a price point? You know what I mean? So there's still a certain standards of quality you want to adhere to your product. So that's not just super flimsy and all this kind of stuff. So that's that. Then there's going to be a deluxe edition, which has, I believe, 149 pieces of wood extra in it, which is
that's a lot.
It's a lot, which is going to be amazing. And is there anything else? Oh, and cool trays for storage and ease of playing, where you can just take a tray out, open it up, and start playing with whatever faction you choose. And it's super cool. The trays design is really, really clever by Daniel Cunningham. It's amazing. It's just, I'm super excited about that.
Iron Kitten.
Yeah. And then on top of that, there's going to be what we call a satchel edition. And the satchel edition it's satchely. So
comes
in the story, in the story, Emmy's the main character. She has a satchel, and often what's in that satchel is the skin of the Skinless Boy. That's his name.
Yep, his character name, the Skinless Boy.
Yeah, she comes across the skin stuck in the brambles, and she peels it off the brambles and sticks it into her satchel, and it talks to her.
It's just there.
And eventually she meets the actual Skinless Boy, who doesn't talk, just the skin talks. Anyways, that's just a story to say she carries a satchel with the Skinless Boy. So the satchel edition is going to have a full, super thick cardboard satchel with an actual, lid
strap.
And a cloth strap and everything that you can carry it around with the picture of the hand dangling out the front of it. The Skin Voice. Funny. It's so gross and cool. And in that edition, all of the tokens, the ability tokens, are metal coins instead of wood. So those are the 3.
Here's another question. There's another TK question. TK asks, any way to get the comics in a pledge level or as add-ons?
Yeah, I keep trying to think about how to do that. So the logistics of that is just it's very poor from a like a from an environment perspective and b from a perspective of the amount of shipping. Because Dark Horse would have to ship them like for me, they would have to ship to each of my hubs and ship them there, and then from there they'd have to ship them to each backer. And it
Yeah.
just is like the cost of that is like it's cheaper for you to just get it through your comic book store or whatever. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, go
I
support
am,
your
yeah,
local comic book store as well.
absolutely. And I'm trying to negotiate with them to see if they can give me some sort of digital code or something. So maybe you can get it off Comixology or something like that, or Dark Horse website, and maybe get
I
a
think that could
digital
be a
version
good, like
of it.
a push to,
Yeah, to get the
I
first
think that could
issue
be
for
really
free.
good.
That type of
Yeah.
thing would be awesome.
It would be awesome. So I'm
Um,
trying, but
hey Jay, can you tell people what creator-owned comics are in general? Because some people don't
well,
know.
yeah. I mean, growing up, most of the comics were not creator owned. They were all like DC, Marvel type stuff, where a company paid you to write a Superman story, and you wrote a Superman story, and then that was it. And then Marvel or DC owned those comics. And then I don't know who was first at it, so I don't know the history of it or whatnot. But Image is a very famous one for it, and obviously now Dark Horse and Drawn and Quarterly and many others, where they want to attract talent. But one of the ways they attract that talent to their publishing house is they say, "Look, you can make us a comic, and we'll sell it, and we'll share the money and everything, but you can retain the rights to it." Mr. Creator or Mrs. Creator, you can retain the rights to it. And they're like, oh, so that attracts a lot of really top talent because that's very, very interesting because then they can do deals like this outside of the big corporate world. They can do whatever they want. And so that's what it is. It means the creators themselves own the rights to do whatever they want with the comic.
Yeah, which is very, very cool. And it's how, we're getting to do a lot of great work with a lot of great people
I know.
who
So
just
cool.
want to have fun. They just want to make cool things themselves, right? So
Yeah, I've had two comic book creators. I'm going to say in my and Sen's world of comic book creators, like high name people, that came to us, that came to me and said, "Can you make a game for my based on my comic?" And we're like, "What? Can we? Yes." So this is like all dream come true type stuff where we're getting to work with some of our heroes in the comic book world. It's awesome.
Edward says a code would definitely be cool. And Ben asks, will the satchel speak and hold a conversation?
At least a one-sided conversation.
All right.
I think there was a quick question just because you were explaining the dice tower
Mhm.
earlier, and Catherine was just wondering. So the dice
Yeah.
that are get stuck in there, just what is cleanup like?
Oh,
Like, can you just flip it over
you
and then hop
just
back out again?
I don't even do that. I just shake it a bit and they just come out.
They all pop out. Okay.
Yeah.
Shake it, shake it, shake
And
it.
worst comes to worst, like somebody drops I don't know, a hamburger in there or something like that.
So,
It,
but yeah.
It does
it,
open.
it can open. You can open it.
Okay.
It just unfolds.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Jay, can you tell me, other than not working with me, what was the hardest thing about making this particular game for you? All
It's
the research?
no, probably just the combat. Like it took us so long to figure out how to do combat because we didn't know. I didn't know how to do it because I'm not a super fan of them. Like I haven't played a lot of combat games, besides stuff like Magic the Gathering and whatnot.
Yeah.
But actual dudes on a map type game, where they're moving around and fighting each other. And it's I wouldn't say a stretch, but I mean there is combat in this game 100%, but it's
Yep.
one of the 4 actions you could take. And so it's not something like you're not doing it every turn or even every round necessarily. So it's definitely sporadic combat, but it's fun combat when it does happen. So that was the
Right.
hardest part is trying to wrap my head around that.
And because it's not, total combat, all out balls to the wall combat game, but it has some combat, and you're the type of person who doesn't necessarily love combat. How does that make the game feel for you,
Mhm.
as the designer? Is it like, oh, I'm sad there's combat in it, or is it like, oh, this combat is good and it's good enough, or this combat is no longer puzzly and that makes it even better because
Yeah.
it seems to be better than that? Like,
Yeah.
what's your take on the amount of combat that's in there? Who's gonna like this game?
Yeah,
Really?
I mean, it's definitely has a lot of Euro tendencies to it. Like it is collecting tokens. One side's collecting and putting them on a track, increasing their different abilities. Another faction is taking and putting them in a bag, and it's a bag building game. and a third one has this little grid, and you slide the tokens, bumping one out, and you activate the 2 that remain. So everybody uses tokens in a different way, and each of those is a very Euro-y sensibility to how the mechanics work. And the fact that you have these 3 ways to score points feels like there's always these 3 different threads that you have to kind of keep pulling on, and it's hard to figure out which one you should maintain focus on. So I don't think it feels like a combat game. I think combat is one of the mechanisms that helps drive the puzzle and helps you try to figure out how can I. That's one of the threads you can pull on is combat, and there's 2 other ways to get points. So that's, I think, for me, it's great, and I have been enjoying more and more thematic games of late in the last few years than just pure kind of abstract games or whatever that are like just very abstract kind of Euro games. And so I'm enjoying things that are more thematic. So the fact that it's everything has a purpose and a reason, especially if you're a fan of the comic, not that you have to be, I think it really satisfies me a lot. So I don't mind it at all. It's fun to do it, and the Cube Tower makes it very fun to have combat in the game.
Cool. That's a great point. Like, you don't have to know the comic to play the game, right?
No.
There's no trivia questions on the characters, no? Okay. What about this? The different factions. You've already said, how some of the different factions play, but can you go through the factions and tell us a little bit about each one and their play style and what type of player you foresee maybe liking that type of faction? That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
the protectors is Emmy and her friends who want to protect Harrow County. And so one of the ways they get points, their asymmetric way of getting points, is by going out and collecting these townsfolk that are on the board and then creating a path of units, whether they're hates or we call them legends. Your main character that you're choosing to be in this game is a legend. A path of them, and you can pass the townsfolk from hex to hex to hex to hex all the way to get to your home hex, and you get points for doing that. And the way they play is that, again, if they land on a hex, there's a token, they immediately put that in the appropriate row. And there's 3 different tokens. There's move, there's spawn, and there's strengthen. And you can imagine what all those things do. And so they just get stronger and stronger as they get more of these tokens. And they also have this legend ability token with legend ability where they can place these path tokens on the board that make it cheaper to move around. And so there's a lot of movement for them, and I think there's a really cool, satisfying puzzle for trying to figure out how to get these townsfolk home. But it means you got to spread yourself really thin. And when combat does happen, you are bonused if you have more units on your hex than your opponent. So it's often the protectors don't have that bonus because they're spread so thin. So that's a tricky part. Whereas the family, they can bunch their people up, and they're playing storms down. And there's these little kind of hexagon loops, if you will, like hoops. And whenever the family legend moves, there you go. They put a one of these storm tokens down on the board, and they're trying to connect their home hex to a hex with one of those blue buildings, and then they destroy it. And they're trying to destroy Harrow County. And so, and on top of that, the storms make it harder for the protectors to move around because it costs 1 more movement to move onto a storm for the protectors, but not the family. And then there, as I mentioned before, they're playing a bag building game. So when they collect tokens, they can either put them in their bag or they can put them on their board. But when they put them on the board, they're out of the game permanently, but they will, if you put enough down, increase how many tokens you can pull out of the bag. So you are able to kind of tailor your bag by putting some out of the bag and kind of shaping the bag to be the kind of bag you want it to be. And so the challenge with the family is that it's a very chaotic turn because you never know what you're going to get. So, and then you have to kind of react to what you pull out of there. But once you get to chapter 2 in the game, we haven't talked about chapters.
Oh, yeah.
It introduces this new card play where you can actually upgrade those tokens to better tokens that are sitting outside the game. And so then you put those in the bag and you draw those. And then that's just the first 2 factions that you play with for the first 3 chapters. You just play with those 2 factions. And then by chapter 4, it introduces a brand new faction called Cammy. Now, Cammy is the twin sister of Emmy, who was born out of that tree, and she was absconded to the city and brought back. She's now back in town, and she wants to rule over Harrow County. And she's the twin sister of Emmy, and she plays totally different. So she has a sliding action grid I kind of mentioned before, where she slides something in and something pops out, and she activates 2 things a turn. That's how she activates icons. There she is right there. She also has 2 legend tokens, and they're kind of like Stratego, where you can tell which one's Cammy and which one's a goblin, but your opponent, it's got the same face on the other side. They're not sure which one's which. And what Cammy's trying to do, her secret objective, not secret, her objective, her asymmetric objective, is that she's trying to find her doll token. And her life essence has been imbued, has been soaked into this doll. And your opponent at the start of the game is given 3 doll tokens, 1 real one and 2 decoys. And they put them face down, and they can pick them up with Haints and move around the board. And Cammy is going to get 4 points if she can find that doll token and get to it with a Cammy token. And there's just a lot of really cool deduction elements in here where you can fake them out, or you can like try to like really defend 1 doll token. And so you're thinking obviously that's got to be the doll token. You spent all this effort trying to get these Haints off that hex, and then eventually you find out that it's not even it. So that adds a lot of fun to it. And the card play for Cammy is even cool too, because when you play a card, it stays out. And her legend ability, her unique legend ability, is she gets to reactivate any card that she's had played out previously. So that gets even more powerful, which is cool. And I'll say final, it's not even true. The final faction in the box is Hester. And this is something we were just really dying to figure out, pun intended, I guess, where Hester is the witch that is buried under the tree. And the whole story of Harrow County, the comic book, is her coming back to life. And so we're like, that's got to be in here. So we got to figure out how to make this happen. And so, yeah, you play as Hester. She's a dead witch. She doesn't have units. She's not moving around the board. She is under the tree. She's controlling the roots of the tree. And so you see off to the side, those brown and black tokens off to the side, those are roots. And you put them on the hexes, and she gains cubes matching the color of the terrain. And she can put those in the cube tower. And if a certain color comes out where you have a root and an enemy Haint, you can infect that Haint. And if you want to show back to me on my screen, the Haints are like this cute little thing. This is a 3D printed model, so it's going to look even better than this in the final. So this is just from this. But then Hester has these little snakes, and these little snakes get stuck in the ear of your Haints. Just like in the comic, that's how they get infected, is by snakes going into their ear.
Into their ears.
So cool. Now, what's really cool about an infected Haint is that when it's red or Protector's turn, they can still control this Haint. They can move them around, pick up tokens, fight with it. They can do all this stuff. But when it's Hester's turn, Hester can now move this Haint around because it's infected. And she pays cubes to move it to adjacent hexes. And she's trying to get an infected Haint from each side to the same hex. And when she does that, she kills both of them, gets a point for it, and she creates a bonfire there, which is very true to the
Important,
story.
yes.
Yeah. And now in the future, if enough cubes of the color matching the hex where the bonfire's on come out of the tower, Hester can come back to life. But that's not the end goal. She's not fully strong yet. She has to eat the other legends in order to come back to life. She literally has to move onto a hex with another legend and literally eat their token. She will take tokens away and put them on her side. You see how she has 2 yellow columns of yellow hexes on either side of her board? It's because she has to eat 3 from each side. It's our way of trying to figure out that 3-player issue you have in combat games where, you're just going to gang up on one, 2 people gang up one. In this one, it's impossible, at least for Hester, because she can't gang up. She has to equally eat each side in order to win the game and get points. So if she can eat 6 times total, 3 from each side, she comes back to life and she wins. Even if another player's triggered the end game scoring with their 7 points, which I've mentioned, is how you win the game. If she comes back to life, she will just win the game, period. And so it's what's I love about Hester so much is that it's still at its core a 1v1 game, and these 2 factions are playing a 1v1 game. And now there's this other Hester with roots and she, moving your units around, and you have to contend with that. But she doesn't care about your ability tokens, so she's not messing with the balance of that. And she doesn't care about the brambles, which we want to get to because we have points for King of the Hill. That's one of the threads you have to pull. So there's a lot of stuff still kind of maintained in the 1v1 game that's still balanced really nice. And then this adds a whole layer of like getting kind of screwed over by this 3rd player. And how much effort do we want to put on stopping her when I have my own objective? I want to go tear down this building and then kill, I don't care about what she's doing until eventually you do care, because, you're both going to lose if she wins and comes back to life.
So much going on. And that's not all. Like when you say, but wait, there's more, there literally is more. There's even more.
Yeah, there's an expansion that comes with the deluxe and the satchel edition. So that's called the Fairfolk, which is based off of one of the spin-off series that once the whole story was done after 32 issues, they've done a bunch of 4-issue miniseries, and one of them was called the Fairfolk. And so that you play as a Fairfolk. If you've played Root, it's similar to the Otter faction in Root, where the Fairfolk in the comic and in this game, they've lost their queen and her sword and her crown and need to find them, but they can't do anything for themselves. So they have to make offers to people in order for them to help them out. So it's really, really fun and clever. They can act as either a third player instead of Hester or as a fourth player with Hester. So it's a up to a 4-player game.
Oh, that's almost overwhelming. So you said Root. You brought up like my favorite game of the last couple of years. And it is a really fair comparison, route to this game, in that both are great, both have that mild combat. Not that it's not exciting, but it's not everything about the game, right? Both have that asymmetry, very hard asymmetry, but still tied into, a general understanding of you're getting points. How you get points is different, but you're getting points, and everybody wants points. And so I think there's a really good kind of correlation between the two games, which is, hopefully positive for Harrow County, because Root is just this sort of thing that has its life of its own now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so a lot of people are saying, I love how passionate you are about Harrow County, Jay. It makes me quite invested in it. Can't wait to play this game and read the comics. That's right. And
Nice.
I mean, hopefully someday, maybe watch the show. And there's the sky's the limit for talented writers like Cullen and artists like Tyler. They are amazing people to work with. And they want stuff for Harrow County because they believe in it so
Yeah.
heavily.
That's what's so
like we
great
do.
about this company is the fact that, and one of the reasons why I like working with creator-owned content, comic book writers and creators, whatever, is that they are as invested and passionate as we are. Like they want this to be awesome. It's their baby. They own it, and they're so protective of it, and they want to be cool. So that was one of the tertiary goal of Mind Management, was to make a game so on brand that other comic book makers would be like, I want that. I want a game like that. And it's happening. It worked.
Yeah, I was talking to Cullen the other day about another project, and we're talking about brand extension in general, and how we all want that. Like that's the goal. That's the big goal for us. Is can we extend your brand so that people who were not the fans of your IP are now the fans of your IP? That pushes production of that product in a whole other sphere. Like when Dark Horse is reprinting omnibuses of Mind Management, that's a good thing. That's a good sign for us. That's a great thing for Matt. It's a good thing for Dark Horse and
Mhm.
for fans. I mean, everybody wins. Everybody wins when
You make
a
new fans.
creator-owned product is made. Not so sure about, Disney and Star Wars and whatnot. That's okay and everything, but Spin Master.
But it's funny. I've actually turned down some non-creator-owned comic stuff that have been pitched to me. I'm like,
Right. Well, yeah, because it doesn't feel the same, right? It
yeah.
doesn't have that personal touch. Um, what what would be, you've got to work with a whole bunch of your favorites and my favorite comic book
Mhm.
creators already, and I know what's on the docket. Who else would you want to work with?
I mean, you, yeah, I'd love to work with Brian Vaughn. Who wouldn't want to work with Brian Vaughn, right? That would be awesome. I don't know. He seems like he'd be protected with a lot of lawyers type stuff, but I don't know. Jason Aaron would be cool. I like a lot of his comics.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean,
Brian Vaughn is
listen,
Saga, by the way, if you haven't
yeah,
stopped all these up.
yeah, that would be really cool. Saga would be amazing. And it's not a hint. It's not. I have no connection to Brian Vaughn. And Darwin Cook. Imagine doing a Parker game. That would be amazing.
Don't you know that we got tapped to do Parker a while ago when it was not when he just passed.
Yeah.
Darwin passed a while ago. Anyway, but we were supposed to do a Parker game, and it just because of the legacy and the the family and everything. It just didn't
Yeah.
get done. But anyway, yes, I would love to do something with Darwin's work. He is the reason why I came back to comics,
Ooh.
like single-handedly. Michael
That's
Eaman got me the one comic that Darwin did a long time ago about the Justice League, and it's like, oh, I guess I'm back into comics now,
it
and that
was
was it.
honestly Neil Gaiman for me. Like I had read all the Sandman, and then when Sandman ended, I kind of stopped going to comic stores until 10 years later he did another Sandman comic. So I started going back to comic stores and saw some other comics and started reading some other comics, and that's how it goes.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, you
it's
have to be
funny.
following titles, otherwise you're not going to see anything. Because otherwise, why are you there?
Yeah, yeah. Jay is not like a cape and cowl kind of
No,
guy. So Jay introduced me to all these weird indie comics. And I've always been a cape and cowl guy, so I've always, try to make Jay read, hero comics. And he does not like them at all. But that doesn't mean he doesn't like all of them, because some of the newer brands of, more superhero-y stuff where it's subverted like completely. I think you enjoy those somewhat,
yeah,
right, Jay?
Birthright and Boys, yeah,
Yeah, and all those types of things.
yeah.
Also, not a hint.
No, I think there is a Boys game already
Someone did a
upcoming.
boys
There
game.
is. There
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Oh, Ben Osteen is saying Fables would be good.
Yeah, it is a video game. Yeah, it's the people who did the it's a Wolf with Me. Wolf, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there's a Fables video game. Same who did Walking Dead, that kind of
Yeah.
almost choose your own adventure game. I can't remember who.
Yeah.
Telltale Games.
Yeah. That I think it's my
Wolf
friend's.
Among Us. That's it.
I think it's my friend's brother who did that
Ah,
from like my hometown.
that
Which is very
seems too
weird.
big. I don't know. I think Vertigo owns that. I don't know if that's creator owned.
I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
We'd have to find out. And it's funny because even through doing the work that we're doing, we've come to find that creator owned has various levels of creator
Yeah.
owned. Right?
I am working with an actual company right now on a contract. I'm like, I want to be talking to the creators. But the comic's really cool, and the game concept is super cool. So I'm jazzed.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah,
like
check
game.
here.
That's like game 5. It's like down the road.
Okay,
Yeah.
so game 2 is about to hit Kickstarter. You
Yeah.
got plans for game 3, 4, and 5? Did you
Yeah.
want to? We're kind of getting the end here. I know you probably can't say anything too
No, I
much,
don't.
but
I
is there
can't
any
really.
hints you want to drop?
Not really. I don't want to divert attention away from it and get people excited
No.
about some game that doesn't exist. And
Harrow
B,
County.
two
Harrow
of them
County.
don't have contracts, so they're just in negotiations.
So Harrow County opens on. It's make it sound
Tuesday.
like a movie.
Yeah, go see it opening weekend.
Launches on Tuesday. And what can people expect?
An awesome campaign. So there's going to be one way we're going to try to keep people engaged is we have this. The challenge I have with this is that often in Kickstarter you can download a print and play if that's your thing, or you can sign up to a TTS and play a downloaded mod for TTS Tabletop Simulator. And the challenge with this game, because of the cube tower, and because cube towers don't work with the physics of Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia, I can't really offer a print and play or Tabletop Simulator. So the two things we're doing, one is we're going to have a schedule where you can sign up to play and have the game taught to you on Tabletop Simulator with one of the designers. So Shad Miller, the other designer, is going to help run demos throughout the campaign, and he'll use a real cube tower in real life whenever there's combat, and he'll transfer the results to the game. And
Right.
so that's what I do when I play test. Yeah. And so that's one, I think, really cool thing, so that people can actually play with one of the designers there present, I think is really cool. And I'll probably pop into a few of them as well. And then we also did this cool thing called the Puzzles of Harrow County. And so we have this puzzles where it's a certain snapshot of the game state. And it's like, what card would you play in order to win the game this round?
That's awesome.
And you're like, what? And so you have to know the rules. So that's going to motivate you to kind of watch a couple videos or even read the rule book, which will be linked on there to understand how it all works. And they're tricky. They're tricky puzzles, which I think are great. And we did one puzzle per chapter, which we haven't talked about, but the game is kind of
let's get back to the chapters, because that's really fascinating. And also I wanted to talk to you about the shift system for this game. It's not the shift system.
I tried to figure out if we should do the shift system for Harrow County. And for those that are not aware, my management has a shift system where the losing side gets to open a package, a sealed box that has components and whatnot in it, so that it shifts the balance to the side that lost. And now they get extra powers. Maybe they'll win the next game. And there's 14 of those boxes in there. They're basically like little mini expansions. They're really, really cool and really changed the game up quite a bit, not just like a little, like quite a bit. And so it's exciting. And so I'm like, for Harrow County, can I do it? Can I add this shift system? And it felt more like gating the gameplay, like for no reason. Like, oh, you don't get these extra characters, and then now you get extra character. Like, it's just like it would have felt forced and not real in this case. So the shift didn't make sense, even though it is at its core a 2-player game. It still didn't make sense. So. But I am very concerned, as just like in my management, about accessibility and onboarding new players. And so in my management, we have a training mode. And that is basically what is the core, the basic essence of the game that still is the game and still highlights the game, so that if you played it, you'd still be satisfied. And my management, you could play a training mission in 20 to 30 minutes of my management, which is wonderful. And some people only play that because the normal game is maybe too advanced for them, which is fine. So I'm thinking for Harrow County, what is the basic core? So we have a chapter 1, which is like everything is like as basic as it be. There's no extra cards, and you're just trying to get your objectives and try to kill each other, and it's really basic. And then chapter 2, you had some cards, so both players have cards, and you can choose different characters to play as. And then chapter 3 is basically the full game experience, where there's these bonus tiles in the middle for whoever chooses something first. They get this bonus tile, so that adds a new complexity. The townsfolk and the buildings in the first 2 chapters are placed on the board in specific spots, but in chapter 3 and onwards, they're placed by your opponent every round. Every round they're placed, so it becomes a lot more dynamic and not just a very kind of same old pattern that you have to make with your haints or your storms. And it gets harder and harder to get points from killing haints. There's a little dial on your scoreboard, and it has a spoon. And when you kill somebody, you get a point for it. But then you have to rotate the spoon up to 2 haints. And now you need 2 haints to kill to get 1 point. And then you have to rotate it up to 3 haints. And there's ways to move that back down and whatnot. But that's chapter 3. And then chapter 4 I mentioned was Cammy, and chapter 5 is Hester, the witch, 3-player. So it's tricky. Witch. It took a long time to figure out. Like, it's a 3-player game, or at one point everything was all involved. It's a 4-player game. It was all told was up to a 4-player game, but we finally said let's leave Fairfolk for an expansion because it's getting too confusing. And then Hester felt like it had to be in this game because she's so core to the story, but it's a little disingenuous to just say it's a 2 to 3-player game, because I would not recommend somebody buying this, going home and playing it right off the bat with 3 players. I think it's too complicated. That you're basically jumping right to chapter 5, and you're not onboarded. You're not it's just too much, especially for the Hester player. You have to know how the other players play in order to play Hester properly and well. So that's a tricky part to it, but we have a solo mode that's just been finalized now, and it will be a stretch goal because it does require extra components and whatnot. And if that gets unlocked, the solo mode you play as Hester. So that's one way you can train yourself up on how Hester works.
Very cool. You put a lot of thought into the onboarding and the getting people ready to play the full game and experience everything at once, and I think that's great. It's something I think more designers of especially systematic games that can be modularized and whatnot should really think about doing.
Yeah. Is there a demo to onboard people so they can actually say, I can play this?
And is there anything else that is really, really cool that people should look out for in Harrow County? Like, if they're not already sold on it by your, last 50 minutes of salesmanship, give us one more thing. One more thing, Jay.
Well, if you really like Tyler Crook's art, and if you don't, I don't know who
you are.
Like, yeah, his art's
You're
amazing.
some kind of strange person.
There will be a pledge level to get some of his original art of things that are in this game.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
So you're talking like original art pieces, like on the paper, not a print. This is like what Tyler painted.
Everything. Yeah.
So if you haven't read Harrow County yet, you should go read it. But B, if you read the omnibuses, what you'll get in a lot of the omnibuses is process. from both Cullen for the writing and Tyler for the art in the backs of the omnibuses. And the effort this man makes to paint is ridiculous. Like it's just
I'll
like next level nuttiness.
I'll one up
The
that by
snake
saying
picture, the snake pictures was ridiculous.
if you at the very least back for $1 so you get all the updates. In the updates, I will be sharing process videos of art from this game of Tyler drawing it in pencil and then painting it, and like with the kind of the stop motion kind of thing, like a
Yeah,
time lapse.
yeah.
It's awesome to watch. It's so fascinating. It's mesmerizing.
He
Good.
is he is a fascinating painter. Because I've watched Brian Hurt paint and Engers paint Marie, and I've watched Matt paint and his wife paint in the office, and it's like that's great. And then Tyler's just like next level, just ridiculous levels of detail and process. So anyway, he blew
Mhm.
my mind. Blew my mind. So yeah, I think you might want to hold one of those pledges back for me. I mean, I'll pledge on this system though, so you get that big bump. Excellent. If anybody has any questions, let us know as you roll through our socials. Erica, where can people find you on social media?
At Erica Buiris.
And you can find me at Senfeng Lim. If you want to reach out to us at Maple Syrup, you may do so. Jay, you are at where?
Off the page game. So whatever it is, whatever social media platform it is / off the page games.
There you go. Hook it up. Follow that Twitter handle, etc., etc. Instagram for more, pictures of the board game, or everything is going to be there. And if you'd like to support what we're doing here at the Meeple Syrup Show, please do link us up at patreon.com/meeple syrup. And let's just go quickly to see what's coming soon in the new near weeks, and then I think Jay has something to share with us. So next week, October 5th, we have Heather O'Neill coming from Ninth Level Games to talk about Venture Society, which is an RPG for younger players to teach social emotional learning, which is going to be wonderful. The week after that, we have a host panel, which Erica and I will be doing. The topic, who knows? We'll see if Alara wants to come and join us. She might. Who knows? October 19th, we have John DeCampos coming to talk about Black Mold, his game that is coming out. And I've got some questions for him about AI images. He will not call it AI art, and there's a reason. And then October 26th, we're lining up people. We've got a bunch of people who've already said they'd come to the show. We just have to slot them in accordingly. So that is what is coming up over the next 3 to 4 weeks. And hey Jay, what do you got there, buddy? What are you
Well, if you
sharing?
as you're signing out, you can play this video as people are.
Okay, well, do you want that as your final advice then?
Yep, that's it. Oh,
All right,
advice?
that's it. Yeah, do you have
Yeah.
advice for people?
Be passionate and respect the brands that you're dealing with, even if it's your own brand of your own game that you're doing with. Like, just honor it and be passionate to it.
That's great. Thanks so much, everybody. I'm going to turn on this video. There we go. And we're going to turn off this. And Jay's going to show you a little process of the one, the only Mr. Tyler Kuruk doing art for Harrow County. Look at
So
that.
cool.
Love it.
It's interesting that he starts with the ink first for a watercolor.
He is a confident man. I work in watercolor and it's horrible. I am nowhere near as good as he is, obviously, but it's not an easy medium. I could watch art process videos all day.
Right?
I know, it's like soothing somehow.
Yeah, it is so good. And I love the palette that he chose for this whole series. It's just so what's the word? I don't even know. Like it's somber, but has that, some of that life to it that you can key into the colors that are important for that character. And yeah, I just love it. That's great. So is that a piece that's up for sale, Jay?
It is not.
Oh, darn. Look at that.
And that's
Brilliant.
final. And then that's what it looks like in the game.
Oh, right. Yeah. On the family board.
Yeah.
Wunderbar. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for sharing that with us. That's a little sneak peek.
Cool.
So everybody out
Mhm.
there in Maple Syrup Land, we'll see you next week when we have Venture Society coming on, and a new RPG that's on Kickstarter currently, killing it. And speaking of killing it on Kickstarter, that is where Harrow County will be October
Soon.
4th. Correct? The 4th?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there we go.
Tuesday.
All right. Well, thanks, Jay, for coming on. It was lovely to see you.
Thank you.
And we will see everybody here next week for more. Goodbye, everybody.